So, we're talking about our life within the communion as a member church of the Anglican communion. And that's come to light in a rather significant way over the last couple months because of some controversy within the American church. There are three parts to the American church, really. There is the Episcopal Church, of which we were members. There is the Anglican Church of North America, with whom we had what, at least I've understand our relationship, an ecumenical relationship. And then there's Canon, which is part of the Church of Nigeria. Okay, now let's look how all of this came into being. And involved in all this is the issue of authority in the church. And authority has to do with the authority of Scripture, of the apostles' teaching of the councils of the church, and an obedience to the faith, as we say, as this church has received it. In Orthodox faith, we are under authority for what we can do. So oftentimes people say, well, couldn't you just do this? And I'll say, well, the bishop will not allow me to do that. Or I was ordained and promised not to do that. In other words, a clergyman, except for maybe Robert, is under authority. And when you are under authority, you give up what's known as speculative thinking. No more speculative thinking. You're under authority about what you can teach and preach and how you can worship. There's great controversy in Colorado Springs about some of the Anglican clergy that are part of Acna, not part of Cana, worshiping in a way that is contrary to the way we're allowed to worship. Now let's look at how this all flowed down. If we go from the time of Jesus, well, that pen is not. Let's see if this one, yeah, that's bright enough for everybody to see. If we go to the time of Jesus, through 325, when the Council of Nicaea was and the creeds were formed that I mentioned in my sermon, and then we go to 1054. So 700 years, the church is one. At this point, the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church part ways over some fairly, we would consider now, minor issues, one of them being the Filioque Clause. And I'm all in favor of the Filioque Clause that the Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son. And the Orthodox believes that the Spirit, trying to reach a three persons co-equal balance, that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, just sort of that the Spirit proceeds from the Father and not through the Son. Scripture is pretty clear that Jesus sends the Spirit. So anyhow, that goes on down to here to the English Reformation. And this is all going on in the 1500s. And what happens here is the Anglicans and the Roman Catholics split apart. But, and this is when Protestantism starts, all these new churches start up here, over in the continent, around the world, and they continue to spring up on a daily basis here in America. But see, they're not, what happened in England is you had the same parishioners with the same priests, the same bishops, in the same buildings, rejecting certain reformational issues with the Roman Catholic Church. But it was still, here's where apostolic succession comes in. The apostles who ordained these guys, and then these guys ordained those guys, they were still in apostolic succession. Now let me tell you how apostolic succession is sort of lived out symbolically. Apostolic succession is lived out, say, when Mike Williams was consecrated a suffragan bishop. in Acna. That's where he is today. Well, actually, he's flying home from an Acna College of Bishops meeting. Now, a lot of those guys, I don't know how they were consecrated, but there are a lot of bishops within Acna that are not in apostolic succession. In other words, they were consecrated by bishops who were not consecrated by bishops, who were not consecrated by bishops. In other words, they're not in succession. So Felix Orgy, Mike was. So Felix Orgy and I made sure that there were present 3 bishops, takes 3 bishops to make a bishop, 3 bishops who were themselves consecrated by 3 bishops that were all in apostolic succession. In other words, you can do the lineage back. Within the Anglican Communion, I have a number in Arkansas, my ordination number, 327, which in Arkansas you have to put on marriage licenses. But I was the 327th priest ordained in the Diocese of Arkansas. Bishops have the same kind of number. Now I have a number in the Church of Nigeria that's in Abuja, is where we're part of the diocese, the province of Abuja. But so you see, we have this going on like this. Now what happens in Anglicanism is, just like Roman Catholicism, they have to organize around all the new countries that they're in as they spread. Now Roman Catholicism was everywhere always, and so their whole centralized form of government of popes, archbishops, and bishops and clergy are in place. And Anglicanism has the very same thing. We don't have a pope, but we have an Archbishop of Canterbury who is the first among equals, who invites people. He has the gift of invitation. He can invite people to the Lambeth Conference or not. And that's one of the way we illustrate authority within Anglicanism. So we come down here to today, and so Anglicanism is all over the world. There used to be, when I was ordained, 38 provinces. There are now 41, actually, provinces. And I don't even know what the new ones are. But they have to be invited into the communion by the Archbishop of Canterbury. So what's happened in the United States is we've got the Episcopal Church that went off the rails here. And they went off the rails by no longer being obedient. They no longer were under the authority of the Anglican Communion. So in 1998, the Lambeth Conference voted in Resolution 1018 that marriage between male and female was the standard in the church. The Episcopal Church decided that marriage could be between any 2 people. It doesn't matter who you love, is how they phrase it. So this boils along until Gene Robinson is consecrated a bishop who's a practicing homosexual in 2003. So working with us in that period the Nigerian Archbishop Peter Akinola. So he is gathering within the United States Orthodox clergy. And out of that comes, in 2006, we have, well, let's see, I'm going to write this differently. 2006, we have Acna startup, we have the Episcopal Church, and we have Canon. Now notice there's no line right there, if you can see it. Acna looks like this. I'll draw it up here. So we've got the Episcopal Church, Acna, and Canon. So the interesting thing sociologically is that ACNA was led by a group of bishops, starting with Bob Duncan, who were just determined to leave the church. Just determined. And they wanted to look like they could be bigger than the Episcopal Church. And so they start up this thing. And in 2006, we have this big meeting to talk about what we're going to do. And what the Nigerians agreed to is, if in Dar es Salaam in the spring of 2007, the primates reassert Lambeth 110 as the teaching of the church and lay out specific rules for the Episcopal Church to come back into line, then we'll stay. But if the Episcopal Church rejects that offer, we'll leave. And so we left. And we left as part of Canon. And I remember standing by the fax machine in McWilliams' house over at Grace Church, waiting for the official letter from Peter Akinola to come saying he had received us as a parish in his diocese, in his province. The way the Church of Nigeria is set up is it's so big, it's about a third of the communion, that they have a lot of provinces with archbishops in Nigeria. But Abuja is where the primate of all Nigeria resides as the primate of that province, but the primate of all Nigeria. And Peter Akinola was that person. Now Nicholas Ako has followed him and is that person. Both those men have been in our parish to check us out. Both of them have had dinner in our house. So Peter Akinola, back in the 2001 or so, took me by the ears and banged his forehead into me, and he said, "Your bishops drive me crazy." I said, "They do me too." And he was talking about these bishops right here, the ACNA bishops. So back in here, there was a big meeting in which basically these people who were starting to leave the church said that they were fully Anglican. So Jesse and I were good friends with Archbishop Carey and his wife Eileen. So I text him and say, Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, are these people members of the Anglican Communion? Now remember, the Archbishop of Canterbury determines that. And he wrote back, tell them they are damn fools if they think they're part of the Anglican Communion. That's his right, his authority to say that. So I said that at the meeting. And so that's why I've always gotten along so well with these guys right here. Okay. I'll get to that. I'm going to get to that in a second. Deanne. I think they're enacting. And I'll get. Okay. Okay. Let's. No, I will talk about that in a second. Let's put these down. Robert?
Yes. Isn't it true, or is it true, that the Episcopalians have been disinvited from Lambeth Conference and show up anyway?
Yes. Okay. So we'll get to that. Right. So that's part of the Archbishop's thing saying that they were not part of the Anglican Communion. In the fall of 2006, our Ephraim Radner and Chris Seitz and Phil Turner and I went and consulted at his invitation with Rowan Williams, who's the Archbishop of Canterbury, asking our Anglican Institute team how we ought to deal with this. And we said that that the Episcopal Church, we ought to be reduced or disciplined into an asymmetrical, ecumenical relationship to the rest of the communion. The primates of the church, all 41 primates of the church, voted to do that, to discipline the Episcopal Church and put them on probation as members of the communion. But the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Anglican Consultative Council, which is another authority within the church, ignored it. And they one of the things they said is they can't sit in the councils of the church if you're a member of the Episcopal Church. And they let them sit in the councils of the church. So there's this huge divide between the primates of the communion and the Archbishop of Canterbury. So next year is the Lambeth Conference. The Archbishop of Canterbury has invited all these people, all the bishops, and 2/3 of them said, we're not coming as long as you're going to have gay bishops there and approve of that and approve of gay marriage. Not coming if you're going to continue to do that. To mitigate them, he said, okay, we're not going to invite the spouses of homosexual clergy, bishops. And Nicholas Sacco said, are you kidding me? Do you think we're idiots in Africa? And one of the problems is they do think they're idiots in Africa. That's and I'm not going to get into the racist part because that's, maybe I will. I don't know. What time is it? Oh, okay. So we're part of Canon. ACNA is this new startup thing like the Protestants. So I call it, and this answers your question, and they're an Anglican usage Protestant denomination. They're not part of the communion. Now, here's what Bishop Williams holds, that because the majority of the primates of the communion recognize ACNA as part of the communion, therefore they are. And I said, Mike, that's a new innovation, that the primates make people members of the communion. The Archbishop of Canterbury does. And he says, well, things are shifting. And I said, well, they haven't changed. We have this argument. We had it last night. So these guys are an Anglican use, but, Deanne, as you're saying, all over the place, Anglican use. In Cana, they're pretty strict about the shape of the liturgy. Nancy?
Isn't it true that there are at least 100 kinds of Anglicans in the U.S. alone?
Yeah, probably right. There are about 100 kinds. There are all these unrecognized breakaway churches don't even feign any relationship to Canterbury. Richard Suter is a very good Anglican with a tint of Catholicism in him. One of the reasons he's not here is I won't let him talk about the Virgin Mary the way he would have us do. And he's over there, unrelated to the Anglican Communion, but an Anglican Rite Church. Now, some people would say the Anglican Communion is a spiritual, liturgical relationship, and we're not disenfranchised from Richard. You know, we understand all these different expressions, but to be an Anglican, you need to be related to Canterbury. We're part of the Church of Nigeria, which is the largest province in the Anglican Communion, and the most powerful person. Now, the Episcopal Church is also a member of the Anglican Communion, not because the primates haven't said it should be disciplined, but the Archbishop of Canterbury continues to invite them. Now, which of these churches should you go to? Well, our daughter and our grandchildren go to an ACNA church in Nashville. It's a terrific church. The rector is just, I'd go to his church if I lived in Nashville. It's just a wonderful church. Now, is it different than ours? Yeah, it's a little looser. It's got funny little things about it. He's a funny guy. But it's a lively church, and it's a faithful church, and it's an ACNA church. In Nashville also is St. George's Episcopal Church, where Lee Sproul is the rector. That's a great church, a great Episcopal church. I'd go to that church and not worry about it. There are lots of good Anglican churches, Episcopal churches, all over the country where the congregations and the vestries and the priests are faithful, even if they have a bishop who's unfaithful. So Chris Love, who goes to church here, his father's the Bishop of Albany. He is the only bishop in the Episcopal Church who will not allow same-sex weddings. And I read something he wrote just last night about the kind of pressure he's under and how the presiding bishop has inhibited him from disciplining clergy who do same-sex weddings. But there's one guy out of all these guys. Right. The REC split back here, and they just left and started over in the 1860s, yeah. So my father went to an REC church, and Bishop Ray Sutton, who's the sort of primate for the REC, the Archbishop for the REC, was not only his rector, but they were good hunting buddies. And Ray Sutton and I are friends. We love Ray Sutton. He's a great priest. And Walter Bannock, who's Steve Bonesire's father-in-law, is a bishop in the REC. The REC is just fine. It has a relationship to ACNA somewhat like Canon did. And I'll get into, go ahead. The Reformed Episcopal Church. Baptismal
They didn't want to go high church during the Oxford. They wanted to stay in the low church spot.
and now they are absolutely high church. That's the irony of it. They're the highest church expression in ACNA except for the Diocese of Fort Worth. So the REC and Cana both had this sort of dual citizenship thing. And whereas these Kenyan churches and the Rwandan churches decided they had gotten these churches started, they turned them over to ACNA and Bishop Foley Beach. Okay, they turned their churches over. So they relinquished their ties with their originating Anglican provinces in Africa and became part of the Anglican Church in North America. I would never do that because ACNA is, remember, an Anglican use Protestant denomination that doesn't have solid apostolic authority. And it's not related, it's not, their bishops, ACNA bishops did not get invited to Lambeth, Robert.
Can I just say a word about why this is important? Excuse me, you didn't plan this for 11, but...
Nor did I invite it.
The reason this is important is because God hates two things. He hates error and he hates system. And the whole idea of the Anglican communion is that we want to not be schismatic. And the reason Cana is a more faithful expression of ecumenism and solidarity and apostolic succession is because at no time did the Cana or the bishops of Nigeria come over and say, we want to start a parallel Anglican church. They said, we know there are Anglicans in North America who want to remain orthodox in terms of sexual behavior and women's ordination and these kinds of issues. They say, we want to provide a missionary presence in North America that allows these people to worship with a clear conscience. We are not trying to compete with the Episcopal Church. We're not trying to compete with them for recognition by Canterbury. We just want to provide an alternative on a missionary basis under the authority of Nigeria and their primate. ACNA, on the other hand, has come over and said, we want to compete with the Episcopal Church. We want to, and I'm still an Episcopal priest because my bishop doesn't pay attention to me. He's 2,000 miles
When he turned 65, he's becoming a Cana priest.
Well, we'll see. But the point is that I'm a sleeping dog. I lie low. But
Which is what gets us into what Deanne is. Thank you, Robert. That was appropriate and good. That it gets into what Deanne's saying when you mention the word order. There is an order to Catholic, universal Christian, back to the apostles' worship. So when people go to a Roman Catholic church, it feels very much like an Anglican church because there is an order. God brought order out of chaos. The church is supposed to be a vehicle for order out of chaos. And you get all these different churches with these clergy who, when I sit in the bishop's chair, it's for a reason. I sit in the bishop's chair as the rector of the parish because it is the bishop's ministry that I'm performing. When I write something on the internet, it's only after Felix Orgy has approved what I wrote. So we're under authority in that way. So when we do the liturgy here, it's what the church has approved. We can't use the 79 prayer book because the bishop doesn't allow it because it's heretical. Kurt.
It strikes me that the Archbishop has lost its moral authority.
Yes, the current Archbishop of Canterbury has lost his moral authority by all the primates and bishops who won't come to the Lambeth Conference because whereas 80% of the Anglican Communion is opposed to the ordination of practicing homosexuals, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Church of England, the American Church, are in favor of it. And so the Archbishop of Canterbury is pandering to the 20%, and he's about to lose the 80%, except the 80% says, oh no, we're not leaving. None of us are leaving. Cana's not leaving. Nigeria's not leaving. We're 80%. We're going to drum this thing in the right direction.
So, as far as the organization and hierarchy and all of that, is Cana still...
I'm going to explain that. Let me explain it while I have time. What time is it? 22. Okay, good. So what happened this winter is Bishop Amos. There are 3 Cana dioceses. There's Cana East, Cana West, and the Diocese of the Mid-something or other. And it's this wonderful guy, Bishop Amos, who is a Nigerian bishop and has primarily a Nigerian diocese up the center of the country and into Canada. I really like Bishop Amos. We've had a nice relationship, but Bishop Amos is a world unto himself. So Bishop Amos is Nigerian, travels all over the world. He was supposed to be at our Senate a couple weeks ago, and they said, Bishop Amos isn't here because he got to the airport and didn't realize you needed a passport to get from the United States into Canada. And I lean over to John Stone Street and I say, baloney, he wasn't going to come in the first place. And I asked Felix later, and he said, yeah, that's right. And so Bishop Amos, he's done the same thing before. Oh, I forgot my passport. I'm up in Canada, and I can't come down to the United States. It's always something with Bishop Amos. So Bishop Amos does what a bishop can do. He appoints a couple suffragan bishops. And so then Agnes says to Archbishop Ako, you said you're going to consecrate these guys, but you didn't ask our permission. And Ako says to Foley Beach, I'm the Archbishop of the Largens province. I represent a third of Anglicanism. And you, in this Protestant denomination, are telling me I have to ask your permission? Baloney. So Felix and Julian Dobbs, who preached here this spring, are in this meeting with Archbishop Ako. And Archbishop Ako says to Julian, what is this? And he said, well, that's the agreement you signed. And he said, I trusted you to give me an agreement that was what I wanted, not what I reject. And so Julian says, well, I kept it secret. So none of us had read the agreement that relinquished the power in the United States of Cana to Archbishop Foley Beach. And Ako said, fraudulently presented, fraudulently tricked into signing this. No longer is it of any value, and no longer are my churches in America part of ACNA. So then they have to do this in a nice way. So they take a couple months to hammer out this agreement, and at a meeting together in Australia, and they sign this document that says that Cana is a member church. All the churches and priests and congregations are member churches of Nigeria and can petition to be in partnership with ACNA. Well, we're not pushing it. So Julian Dobbs goes from that meeting in Abuja after having his clock cleaned by the Archbishop, and he flies directly to Breckenridge, where Jesse and I are going to spend a week with he and his wife and his attorney, Raymond Ding, to ski together. Well, the whole week they're working in secret, going off into rooms and trying to undermine these two guys that are going to be bishops for Bishop Amos, be suffragan bishops. And so here's the phrase that comes up, and this is what's been publicly reported on the internet. We are in Cana East, a primarily Anglo, meaning white, diocese. And Nigeria is primarily Nigerian. And that doesn't suit us. Well, Felix calls me up and says, "What is this?" And I said, I heard him say it with vehemence when we were skiing together. And we're going, that's racist. And so Felix says, why would he say that? And I said, well, he's a New Zealander. And New Zealand has within their culture a heavy dose of racism. And you can see it by their admissions for immigrants and stuff. So then Felix says to Julian, if you're going to leave and go into ACNA instead of staying with Cano, what should I tell people? How should I explain that? What is your excuse? And he said, well, we're primarily an Anglo diocese, and we don't want to be under a primarily black church. And so Felix reports that. Julian is leaving for this reason. Well, I mean, they get furious. And primarily it's Felix and me writing this stuff because I was the eyewitness to Julian doing this stuff. And so Foley Beach says, well, Cana is going to be a church for Nigerian expatriates. In other words, the focus is on Nigerians, and then any of the Cana churches that join the Anglican Church in North America are going to have a broader vision of what they're doing. And we took Foley on about that, big time. I mean, Felix took him on in person. I wrote all these things that Felix approved and put on all these websites Felix says the negotiation with Foley is first shut Don Armstrong up. When actually I'm just... Yeah, he is. He is. So you see there's been this huge tension and definition within the church. Well, it's interesting because if you look at a picture of Cana gathered, it's a good variety and mix of people, white and black. Felix is very big on distinguishing our cultures and naming them. Did he do that this year at Senate? He didn't really talk about white guys and black guys this year, did he? No, I mean, I think he's gotten that all down so that everybody's pretty... Didn't you feel a great unity there and a real love and kinship among everybody who was there? I mean, I've never really experienced anything in the church as nice as it is in Cana. But if you look at... I looked at a picture of the meeting Mike's at right now, the ACNA House of Bishops, and there are about 50 guys there, 2 black guys, all the rest white. If you look at Cana, if you look at our bishops, it's the reverse of that. There's Felix and Amos, who are black, and then there's Martin, David, and Julian, and David Anderson, who are white. So see, we don't have a racial issue going on at all. I mean, Felix Orgy is one of my best friends. We've just come to be really close friends. There's just not that kind of stuff going on. And yet it's boiled up within ACNA. And we resent it and reject it as unchristian. And it's just contrary to the way we think. It's contrary to the basic life of the Anglican communion that is basically an African church. The majority of Anglicans live and worship in Africa. And so how can you get there? I don't know. But so Archbishop Ako said Cana was part of the Church of Nigeria that had a broad ministry within America. Now, this is not the first time that's happened. The American Episcopal Church has a cathedral in Paris, and it has many churches throughout the world that are the Episcopal Church under bishops who are Episcopal bishops. And it's their general ministry where people of all stripes and shapes and sizes and nationalities go to church. The same is true of the Church of England. It has churches. I mean, you go to Paris and you go, wait, am I supposed to go to the Anglican church over here, which is English, or the American church over here, or the French church where they speak French? You know, it's, actually, I don't know if there are any official Anglicans in France. They're not, Carol? There are American churches, but there's not, it's not the same, yeah. Yeah. And so their provinces are America or England. And in the same way, our province, but they're not in America or England, they're in Europe and India and all places like that, in China and all over the world, Singapore. We're the same, but from Nigeria. Now, what's important about that to us is Nigeria is in this apostolic succession. You see, Nigeria is part of the Anglican communion. ACNA is not. Now, they say they are through their relationships, but the Archbishop of Canterbury hasn't said so. The very people that say they're part of that, the Archbishop of Canterbury said, you're not part of that. Going back, Archbishop Carey said that, Archbishop Rowan Williams said that, and now Justin Welby says that. So ACNA has never been part of the Anglican communion other than by claim of friendship. But we are officially part of the Anglican communion because we are a parish of Cana West that is a diocese in the province of Abuja in Nigeria. So Felix is our bishop and Archbishop Ako is our primate. So that's where we are. It's really important to us to be in that apostolic succession, to be ordained in and under orders within that historic 2,000-year-old apostolic faith and practice. CAFCON is this whole other deal, which are all the, it's not all, but it's a lot of the provinces who will not go to Lambeth. And so it's called the Global Anglican Fellowship Conference. And interestingly enough, just to force the Archbishop of Canterbury's hand, they named Foley Beach as the head of that. But Archbishop Ako has been the head of that and is still the active voice of that. And so that is a group within the church, mostly members of the Anglican Communion, who just as a fellowship say, we do not believe in this distorted view of humanity that you all are perpetuating. So it has a force as a political lobby. We tried to, if you remember, right before Rob O'Neill came after me because he believed I'd stolen all the money from Grace Church. Well, but what had happened 2 weeks before he raided our offices is I was at Lambeth Palace trying to negotiate this asymmetrical ecumenical relationship with the Episcopal Church. I think that really was what had happened, and our Anglican Institute had developed and funded a group of 36 bishops that were meeting every 6 months with Rowan Williams, at Rowan Williams' instigation. We met down in Texas. Rowan Williams sent one of his senior bishops, Michael Scott Joint, to join us, and N.T. Wright to join us, and they came to all our meetings to help guide us theologically and within the communion about how to stand up to the innovations of the Episcopal Church. Then Rob O'Neill, a week after a letter goes out from the presiding bishop saying that the Anglican Communion Institute in Colorado Springs was being disruptive to the life of the Episcopal Church, they raid our offices, and everybody disperses because they don't know what to do. Is that what's going on here? It was a good ploy. And then I got inhibited for 6 months, and during that 6 months I find out nothing happened, and so then we leave and join Canon. Because in the meantime at Dar es Salaam they said the Episcopal Church needs to adhere to this or we're all leaving. They said, no, we're not going to, and we left. And we left into Cana.
I believe I read an article by Canon Church which sort of addresses the underlying factor, which is intentions and motivation.
Mm-hmm.
You're a Christian like law, you want to do it, but what are your intentions? What are your motivations? And is it true that the Episcopal Church is over in the poorer countries in Africa, offering them money to prop up whatever, and selling them their version of contemporary Christianity, including women's ordination and gay marriage, etc.?
That is true, Nancy. The Episcopal Church is aggressively, through money, trying to seduce these CAFCON provinces and poor African countries into their fold. And so far, the primates have gotten those others to resist this. But it is a real war, like it is in our culture. And, you know, in our culture, if you're not in favor of the new agenda, you're not a nice guy. Ask John, do you get many emails about that every day? A couple, yeah. So it's a terrorist action. It's a terrorist action that's going on. If you're not in favor of us, look at the presidential election and the gay terrorist movement that is forcing itself upon the candidates. And why is Mike Pence not liked? Simply because he's an Orthodox Christian. Well, we are Orthodox Christians. And we are Orthodox through apostolic succession all the way back. So our staying in Cana is very important to us. It's very important to our own spiritual health. Rabbi Friedman says that a child cannot grow beyond the spiritual maturity, immaturity of its parents until it gets out from under that authority. We felt it when we left the Episcopal Church and we're no longer under Rob O'Neill's stunted, immature Christianity and came under Martin Minns, who has a fully developed, mature Christianity. We felt this sort of release because we had been held down, and now we're lifted up. And the same is true with Archbishop Oko and the Church of Nigeria. And what I'm going to do next week, the youth are presenting the class on Sunday morning, and then the following weeks for the rest of time, I'm going to take what Felix Orji presented at convention about how we are going to operate as Cana in the United States and what our goals and objectives are. And you'll see that those are the Orthodox historic biblical marks of the church in action. And it comes right from our bishop, and our bishop spells out what we're going to do. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, real nice round of applause.